This is an earthquake drill.
On Thursday, millions of people in California took shelter under tables and desks, protecting themselves from an earthquake, an imaginary earthquake.
We're going to get you taken care of, okay?
In this annual drill called the Great California Shakeout, Californians practice responding to the injuries and destruction that are certain when the big one hits.
Marcus, 2 more!
Officials like San Francisco's Mayor Gavin Newsom say it's a civic duty to be prepared.
Look, if you're going to move out to California on the West Coast, if you're going to live not just in one earthquake zone, but 3 zones, you've got to take that seriously. You have an obligation to take it seriously.
The seriousness of earthquakes has been obvious this year, tragically obvious. The magnitude 7 quake that destroyed so much of Haiti in January was one of the deadliest ever, killing more than 220,000 people. A month later, one of the most powerful earthquakes in a century, a magnitude 8.8, hit Chile. Better building standards limited the damage. Still, 370,000 homes were destroyed and at least 520 people killed. In April, a 6.9 damaged 15,000 buildings in southern China and killed 2,700 people.
This has been a busy year by any standard just because...
Tom Heaton, professor of geophysics at Caltech, says where a quake hits can be at least as significant as how big it is. The closest California got to a notable quake this year is the 7.2 that rocked Mexico's Baja Peninsula in April.
If you took that same earthquake and moved it, say, into our urban areas, we'd still be talking about earthquakes in California. It would have been a very damaging event, but it was in the middle of the desert.
For those concerned about keeping Californians earthquake ready, it might be said that nothing could be finer than an earthquake that is minor. A little rattle now and then keeps people on their toes. Trouble is, California's been unusually stable recently. Experts are certain that won't last.
Basically, the San Andreas Fault is locked and loaded and ready to rumble.
Thomas Jordan is director of the Southern California Earthquake Center.
As a seismologist, of course, the longer we go without a big earthquake, the more nervous I get.
Just hold on, kids, hold on.
Because I know that over time, we have to have earthquakes to relieve all of that energy that's being built up along the plate boundary.
New calculations on the San Andreas near Los Angeles show major quakes happen there more frequently than previously believed, and the next one could be as big as magnitude 8.
So the fact we haven't had an earthquake in this region for so long means that our time is getting due.
The most recent big quake in Los Angeles was the 1994 Northridge quake. 57 people died.
We're having an aftershock right now, people.
It was the largest natural disaster before Katrina that the country had ever seen. $40 billion in direct economic damage.
It was a magnitude 6.7. In the kind of math that only seismologists fully understand, a magnitude 8 quake would be many times more powerful.
You know, it's hard to imagine, but the big one that they're talking about would be something like 40, 50 times as destructive as the Northridge quake. For anyone who's lived through the Northridge quake, that's an unimaginable kind of circumstance.
Author David L. Hewlin wrote about how Californians cope with earthquakes in The Myth of Solid Ground.
People probably tend to kind of either get very scared or just sort of write it off, which seem to be the two poles of psychological response to these things. Either they terrify you or you live in denial.
In a magnitude 8 earthquake, the shaking could last for a full minute. To appreciate what that could mean, consider the damage caused in the 15 seconds the ground shook in the San Francisco Bay Area in 1989.
15 seconds. And you can see what happened.
At an Oakland, California park built as a memorial to the '89 quake, David Schwartz of the U.S. Geological Survey remembers that for all the destruction, the epicenter of that quake was far away.
1989 was 70 miles south of the Bay Area proper. And we think our next big earthquake will occur right in the middle of the urban center. If you look out that way, There are hills, those are the East Bay Hills, and the Hayward Fault runs at the base of the hills.
The Hayward Fault is overdue. Add the San Andreas and a startling number of lesser-known faults, and the San Francisco region is ripe for quakes.
We're surrounded by faults anywhere you go in the Bay Area, and we jokingly like to say you can run but you can't hide. And that's sort of the truth.
The San Andreas Fault brought on the Great San Francisco Earthquake of 1906. The violent shaking knocked down almost everything standing. The fire that followed ruined much of what was left. It's been estimated that 3,000 people died. That's the kind of quake, much bigger, much more destructive than the one in 1989, that seismologists figure could be on its way.
So we've estimated in the next 30 years a 63% chance, 2 out of 3, that we'll have one or more magnitude 6, 7 or larger earthquakes.
While earthquake scientists can make estimates, what they can't do is make predictions.
At one point, people were quite optimistic that we'd come up with some systems to predict the earthquakes, and the more we've studied the problem, the more we realize that that's kind of a false hope.
But once the Earth has started moving, scientists may be able to send an alert that shock waves are on the way.
We call it earthquake early warning. It's based on the fact that earthquakes take a certain time to occur. They propagate along a fault. Here in California, we could get up to 1 minute of warning of a major earthquake on the San Andreas Fault before it was to shake downtown Los Angeles.
It turns out almost all of our smartphones have actually got seismometers in them.
Scientists working on an early warning system hope one day to say, there's an app for that.
If we can take the information from the smartphones and assemble it and send it back to some central place, then not only is your smartphone telling you what's coming, but it's telling us what's happening where you are.
A few seconds of warning is good. Years of preparation, better. In the past 2 decades, California has taken the lessons learned in the San Francisco and Northridge quakes to prepare for what could come next.
The transportation system, the water pipelines crossing the faults, the bridges have been retrofit, except for the Bay Bridge, not quite finished yet.
The collapse of the Bay Bridge in the 1989 quake made it a symbol of the state's vulnerable infrastructure. The replacement bridge, scheduled for completion in 2013, includes innovations designed to let it bend and swing and rock in a major earthquake. But its earthquake readiness comes at a cost, more than $6 billion.
Please duck, cover, and hold.
Let's do it.
But as Californians practice for the big one, it might be worth considering not just what earthquakes cost California, but what they have given California. The promise that it's a place where the past can be wiped away and everything can start anew.